Welcome today. Welcome. I'm so excited that you're here joining me for Explore the Canadian Options. I'm so delighted. I've literally counted down to every single moment of today. My name is Olamidotu Vutu-Obada, and I am the anchor for this session, and I will be taking the presentations in this session. I'm really excited. I don't know where you're connecting from, what part of the world you're connecting from, but depending on the part of the world you're connecting from, I would like to know. You can leave in the comments. Otherwise, I would like to know later on where you connected from. It will be my pleasure. This is what I do, and I absolutely love what I do. So welcome, welcome. It's such a delight to be here today. Now, even as we dive into today, I know we all know why we're here. We are here to explore the Canadian options. I would like to first of all introduce myself because I have a lot of people asking, who am I? My name is Olamidotu Vutu-Obada. You can call me Ola, some people call me Ola, short form in Spanish. Some people also call me Dotson, depending on the region you're connecting from. I am an RCIC, a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I know it's a very big, long word, but at the end of the session today, I'm going to be explaining to you what it means to be a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I'm also globally trained, and I always say to people, the easiest way to know about how trained I am is from my accent. I literally went to school in England from a very young age, and then I've had the privilege of living across the world in different countries. I have vast training. I have a BSc in economics. I have an MSc in international financial economics, all from UK universities. And I have over 15 years of work experience in business consulting, management consulting, in project management as well. So I am quite diverse. And the next question people ask me is, how come you are now in immigration consulting? And I say it's a journey that has literally brought me to this place. I am well trained, I'm well traveled, I love to travel. I'm also a successful entrepreneur. In fact, I'm one of the co-founders and the founding partner of Philly Magna, the brand that is actually powering the event today. I'm also a Canadian immigration consultant. So I say to people, who else do you want to be talking to? That's somebody that has actually lived on that journey and been on that journey. And there's so much more to who I am. I'm also a children's book author, to mention a few things, and a podcast host. But you're talking to someone who has lived the journey, who's trained and very knowledgeable in this field. And it's my delight to actually be here. Thank you. So I know you're looking forward to exploring the sessions. Today is not just about me, but it's about everything that you are going to be learning. Now, I'll put something up, and I know it's going to kind of warm your heart as to why we're here. We are here for the Canadian flag. I wish I could say the Canadian anthem or something at this point. We're here because a lot of people have heard about the country called Canada, and they're like, I want to go there. I want to be there. How can I go there? How can I start a new life there? Yes, we are here for the Canadian flag, the Canadian passport, or a new journey, starting a new life into Canada. Now, before I begin to speak into this beautiful red and white country with an amazing passport, I just want to tell you a bit about the company that is powering this. It's being powered today by Philly Magna. Philly Magna is an immigration consulting company, which I am the founding partner of, and it's been in existence across other regions for a while. But then in Canada, we're also a regulated company in Canada. Now, our vision and our mission statement, I say to people, the easiest thing is to say to get documents done for people properly and in the right way. But if you want to read it, it's to be an advisory and consulting company to private individuals and international organizations, government agencies and corporates, businesses across the world. We partner and we offer the best services of what we do. So what it means is I am trained, and anybody that we work with in Philly Magna is actually trained to do the work that they do. And that's what we are. The slogan for Philly Magna is called Talk to the Professionals. And there's a reason why that is our slogan. Now, enough about that, and I'm going to go to the exciting reason why we're here. So exciting for me. Explore the options. What does that mean? When I say to people, explore the options, or explore the Canadian options, people start to think, what does that mean and what am I exploring? You see, the one thing about Canada is an immigrant's country. And coming from someone that has lived in different parts of the world, I know very much about different countries' immigration policies. Now, what I'm going to be talking about first is I'm going to be answering a question. Why Canada? Why are you choosing to come to Canada? Or why should you even bother coming to Canada? Why should you come to Canada above other countries or above other regions that you might have heard about? That's the first thing. And then I will dive very briefly into some of the options that we have in Canada. Now, remember, there are so many programs and options in Canada. So this is actually a generalized overview for someone who is exploring the options and saying to them that they wanna see what is out there. Now, I'll start off by telling you a bit of a story, and I hope that that story kind of gets you excited. So imagine an 18-year-old who has the opportunity to travel to England to start a new life on her own. I spent almost 9 years in England at the time, and I have 7 siblings. 6 at the time were also school in England. Now, when I speak to people, the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, you have a very interesting British accent," and I say, "Yeah, definitely." But the next assumption is they assume that I have a that I have a British passport, and I say to them, no, I don't have a British passport, because the immigration journey in England is slightly different from the immigration journey in Canada. Now, why Canada? And why did I consider, having lived many years in England, why did I consider moving to Canada? And what I say to people, first of all, Canada is an immigrant's country. Regardless of the foreign policy or how things change in an economy, Canada is one of those countries that they will continue to embrace and welcome people. It's so large. I say to people that it's larger than America. It's a very large economy, even though a certain percentage of it cannot be inhabited, but then it is quite large and distinct in the way it is. Yes, it's known to have amazing and interesting in weather. Some parts are pretty cold, much colder than the others, and some parts are pretty warm. But what I always say to people is, if I haven't spent many years in England, and what you find in England is, because I have a lot of people that come to me and say, "Oh no, I'd rather go to England, and I'd rather go to America," but it's a case of preference. But one thing I try and explain to people is, before you choose to go to a particular country, you need to sit down and understand the immigration culture or the immigration story behind, or the policy behind everything that they're doing. Now, why Canada is interesting is because the Canadian economy thrives on people, and they need people to continue to exist, for lack of a better word to say it. In England, for instance, the economy of England is built around services, and education. And so when they're going through a particular downturn, what happens in England is you would see them change their policies to embrace education, change their policies to embrace highly skilled people, because they know that that is what they thrive over, right? Now, when you come to countries like the US, it's also quite similar to Canada, but then there's only so much terrain, so much, how much you can embrace and welcome immigrants, because after a certain time, you start to get into situations of unemployment, and you don't want your people to be unemployed because you're trying to embrace other people. And so you're seeing a case where the US is still open, but then they've almost reached their climax, of how much people they can embrace. The UK is open. European countries are also open, but then because of the fact that they also have to protect the jobs and the employment, and geographically, in that sense, they're also limited by the number of people that they can embrace, is why I always say to people, Canada is interesting because they need people to thrive. They need people to be able to continue to exist. And that's why you will see, regardless of the changing policy year in, year out, inflation, unemployment, whatever it is, Canada's rate of immigration amongst other countries is probably one of the highest. And so I say to people, if you're thinking of a country that is going to be stable in terms of immigration policies, then you need to be thinking about Canada. But that is my first why. Now, I want to go into what I call the options. What do these options mean? And why the options? A lot of people come and meet me and say, oh, I want to go on the school route. What does that mean? Some people come and meet me and say, oh, I want to go on the work permit route. What does that mean? Some people come and say to me, oh, I want to get a provincial nominee. What does that mean? And so, what I'm going to be doing here is debugging and explaining the different routes as much as possible. And it's for you to be able to understand it so that you're able to make an informed decision. Now, immigrating into Canada is something I like to describe as a bowl, a bowl of numbers, right? Now, a bowl of numbers because the more you have, or the more that the system needs at the time in which you're planning to immigrate, the higher your chances of getting into the system, right? So let me give you an example of what I'm saying. There's certain things that will help you. Canada is known to be an immigrants country, like I said. They're also very big on family unification. So for instance, if you've got family here, they're very big on that. They're also very big on skilled labor, because when you have an economy that is highly dependent on people or is constantly growing, having the right skilled labor is very, very important for you to know where you're going. And so those dynamics will play a key role on the kind of people that they embrace or they welcome, and also the kind of professions that are being welcomed. So as an example, during COVID, certain professions were being welcomed more than the others because that was the need at the time. But then for you to be able to understand it even more, let me give you an example, which is the classic example I say to people. Can you imagine doing an average of 50 and 50? So two numbers here, 50 and 50. What is the average of 50 and 50? You would say 50 right now. If I said to you, what is the average of 75 and 25? You would say 50, right? But then remember, there is 75 and then there is 25. So there is a big number and there is a small number. Now, if I say to you, what is the average of 100 and 50? So 100 and then 50, you would say 75. So what has happened is the average is being distorted by what the larger number is and what the smaller number is. So it's been distorted. So that is exactly what happens in Canadian immigration. Depending on what you have and what is prevailing at the time, the average person that is being welcomed, it's almost like you're distorting it. And when I go into the Express Entry program, it will help you understand it more. Now, there's a particular program that is very popular. It's points-based, right? It's a points-based program where they say, based on how skilled you are, how knowledgeable you are, or how young you are, they award certain points to you to be able to come or to be able to qualify for what they call a permanent residency, or to qualify for an invitation to apply for a permanent residency. They call it an ITA, right? So depending on what you have, so let's use a classic person. Let's use a person A, Mr. A. Mr. A is a young person, let's say the age of 25. Mr. A is 25. He has an undergraduate degree and he has 3 years work experience and is thinking about coming to Canada. Now, Mr. A, who I just said is 25-year-old, has an undergraduate degree and has 3 years work experience, would be a key candidate, will be a good candidate. But then what you need to understand is what is going to determine whether Mr. A gets invited to apply for his PR is dependent on what other people in that bowl of water, the average, what other people in the numbers have. So what that means is if you take another 25-year-old, a 25-year-old who is the same age as Mr. A, and we're calling this person Mr. B. This 25-year-old, however, has a master's degree. So he has one degree which is slightly higher than Mr. A. What does that mean? That will give him more points and will award him more points and make him more immigration ready than Mr. A, right? Because he has one additional degree compared to Mr. A. Now, that being said, I can also state another scenario where somebody else will be what will be more desirable than Mr. B, because I've just told you Mr. B is 25-year-old. He has 1 degree and he has 3 years of experience. I've just told you about that's Mr. A. Mr. B has the same thing that Mr. A has, but he has an additional degree. Now, if I gave you a Mr. C is still a 25-year-old, but because he has what they call a Canadian degree, he would have more points than Mr. A or B, because by having that Canadian degree, he has what we call adaptability. He has what we call, he's been trained in the system, and so getting a job or even adjusting in the system is easier. And so for Mr. C, who has a Canadian degree, unlike Mr. A, who has a UK degree, Mr. C is more beneficial to the system because he has something that Mr. A and B don't have. And even though Mr. C has Mr. B, remember Mr. B is our master's guy, Mr. B has a master's. Mr. C is more desirable because he has a Canadian degree, right? Now, I'm going to position a fourth option to you, and that is something that I call, so I've explored Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mr. C. I'm going to explore the option of Mr. D. Mr. D is somebody who has family in Canada. And what does family in Canada mean? It means that he's more adaptable to the system. He has family in Canada, and that means that the chances of him carrying on in the system, even after work, he's got family, let's say a brother or a sister, it has to be close family members. So it cannot be extended family members. No, where you would find family members counting to the system, a lot of times is close family members, So that explains that Mr. D is more desirable because he has maybe a brother or sister, not a half brother, but he has a full brother and a full sister in the system. Now, Mr. D is the person that we said he has a family member. Remember, let me recap where I said Mr. A is 25-year-old, has a degree. Mr. B is a 25-year-old, has an additional degree, right? And then Mr. C is, and both of them still have their 3 years work experience. Mr. C has a Canadian degree, which kind of gives him more points than A and B, right? Now, Mr. D is someone who, the same category as all the others, but because he has family here. Now, when we say family, which is the question I always get asked by people, do you mean an uncle? Do you mean an auntie? No, I say in most cases, except in a provincial case, it means a father, a mother, a brother, or a sister. So it has to be immediate family, right? And that's when it plays a role. Now, because Mr. D has family in Canada, he would have more points there are certain points that will be awarded to him for having family in Canada because he seemed to be adaptable to the system, right? Now, I've just painted 4 individuals that based on their different categories, they are being awarded points. Now, let me go back to Mr. A, who I need to mention, because Mr. A, remember when I said he's 25-year-old, as Mr. A begins to get older, so Mr. A goes from 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, he starts to lose points in terms of the immigration mark that is being awarded to him in the express entry system, because the system is based on the younger you are, the better. The younger you are, the more points you have, right? So that's where you will now start to play in the terrain where people will start to tell you, oh, I'm too old for a particular program. I'm too old, maybe because they've lost points in age. Now, I will go into another program that kind of explains, which I call the provincial nomination. That is based on, depending on the region where you are going to live, there are certain points that will be awarded to you. So as an example, let's say you have Mr. E, who is a teacher, and says, I want to go and live on the east side of Canada or the north side of Canada. And based on this, they would award him, they would invite him to apply for a provisional nomination. And based on that, he will qualify for a PR. So the point here is that the provisional nomination is based on, for instance, a particular thing that you have, or maybe you have a particular interest or your particular profession. But it doesn't mean that those provinces are less developed than the popular ones that we all know about, the Ontarios and all the rest. No, it just means that maybe your particular profession is being desired in that area, or certain things like that. That is the kind of thing that that would influence provincial nomination, right? So remember what I've said. I've put the fact that things that can affect what you qualify for, I've put the fact that your age can affect it, the number of what degrees that you have can affect it. I've put in fact that the number of if it's a Canadian degree can affect it. These are the things that are quite important to be able to understand the Canadian immigration journey, right? Now, remember how I had mentioned the school route. The school route allows you to basically, remember what I said, that if somebody has a Canadian degree, it gives them more points than somebody that doesn't, right? And so what people try to do with the school route is they try to max out the points that they can get from the school system, so that that way the points that they get, and also they get a post-study work permit, then allows them to be on the journey to the permanent residency in Canada, right? So that understanding is what it sounds like, a holistic point of view for you to be able to understand the Canadian system, how the age work, how the your degree or your interest works. All these things play a key role in the Canadian option, right? Now, there are other things that we can then begin to explore. Oh, I have a job offer, or oh, I don't have a job offer, or oh, I want to I want to be able to do a certain thing, or I don't want to do a certain thing. These are the things that can also affect the Canadian journey, right? Now, that being said, one of the most beautiful things about the Canadian option is that it's very big on family unification. Like I said earlier, so if you have family, right? If you have family here and you're thinking, okay, you know what? I need them to come here. I need them to come and study. After they study and then they're on a different journey, then they can gain more from the system. Does that make sense to you, right? So let me put an example of someone of the student route. The student route example would be, let's say somebody that is in their 40s and choose to say that she wants to come to Canada because if she does a minimum of 2 years degree, she's entitled to 2 to 3 years work permit. So she comes to Canada to retrain, to be able to do the work, right? Or be able to amass more points from getting a Canadian degree, right? So she goes in the system, she gets a Canadian degree. When you're done, you're entitled to 2 to 3 years work experience, work permit. The work permit is when people then get the work experience, Canadian work experience, which would then allow them to qualify, right? Qualify for some of these programs. So this is why a lot of people would do the school route, right? Now, that being said, what is important to people is not about jumping and say, oh, I want to do this school route, or I don't want to do the school route. You need to ask yourself, what is important to you? What exactly is important to you? And why are you doing it based on that? And that's how you will then be able to answer the next question in terms of when to sit down with an immigration consultant, right? Now, the school route is quite interesting because a lot of people that are over 40 typically go this route. When you're in the school route, over the age problem that you have with Mr. A is not a problem anymore, because in the school route, the points that you've lost because of age, you can make up on the school journey. You can make up by getting work experience, or after your school, you can make that up as well. Because what the school route does for you is, it also entitles you to a particular program called the CEC program. Now, the CEC program, what it means is, it's saying you have Canadian work experience, right? The CEC program. So imagine coming into Canada and then you've gained you've gained a bit of experience, right? Let's say you have a degree, right? And after that degree, you then gain a 1 year or 2 year work experience. By doing that, it allows you to apply for the CEC program, because it's called the Canadian experience class, right? And that program opens you up to maybe a normal program that you won't qualify for. The next route and the next popular program that most people like to explore in the Canadian system is what we call the business route. Now, it's a very interesting route because you've gone, and that's another, that's there's in between, it's a program that I haven't touched, which is where people come in through work permits. So for instance, maybe there's a particular profession, you get hired from out inside the system. Let's say they need teachers, you apply for the job, you get the job. But this particular program is very, it's over time it's reduced because inside employers, to be able to prove that they have to hire somebody from outside, they need to prove that they've tried their best to hire this for the same profession amongst PRs, permanent residents and citizens. And unless they can prove that nobody could fit that role before they're allowed to go out and hire. So over time, because of the strict requirements that the government imposes on employers, what you find is hiring from outside is now less popular unless it's really a profession where, there are not that many people that do that profession. So that then leads us into the business route. What happens is, and this is primarily for people that maybe have a lot of finances, have the money, and they can afford it, right? What they do is you come into the system and maybe you buy a franchise, you buy a particular business franchise, you buy a company that allows you to basically hire yourself or offer yourself a work permit, because then you are an owner or an investor, manager kind of thing. So that way you're literally going back into the system because you cannot get a work permit. Maybe you're in a particular profession that doesn't allow people to hire you from outside. People can hire you then in the system, invest in a particular franchise, buy a particular company. Some people buy existing companies. Some people buy small, medium-sized companies, and then you hire yourself. Obviously, if you're thinking of buying a company, that is a lot of investment, right? A lot of money needs to go into that. And sometimes some of these franchises start from anything from 100,000, 150,000 Canadian dollars, 200,000 Canadian dollars. So this goes back to what I was saying from the beginning, that as an immigrant, you need to ask yourself, the first question you want to ask yourself is, what is my threshold? Do I want to come in as a student, right? Or do I want to come in as do I have family here that can then give me certain points to be able to immigrate? How old am I in terms of age? So because age plays a key role for people. Because when you then begin to go into older ages is when people will say, okay, you know what? I will go to a particular province to live, which goes back to the provincial program. Now, remember what I told you about the provincial program. It doesn't mean that these provinces are less developed. No, it's just a case where your profession is maybe more desirable in those provinces than in another province. And remember, if, for instance, you live in a capital city, it's like comparing a capital city and another city. Most capital cities are heavily populated. So the reason why the government does the provincial program is to encourage people to go to other provinces that are not as populated, so that you have kind of like a balanced spread of people, right? Which is why you would see a lot of the cold regions, because most people don't like cold. A lot of cold regions offer a lot of provincial programs, or you will see regions where people are not known to go as frequently, where house prices are cheaper or the population is not as high. They offer a lot of family-friendly programs. Now, what a note of caution, because what I typically say to people with the provisional program is, when you get a provisional program, you have to live in that province for a minimum of 2 years. So what that means is, when you get that provisional program, if your provisional program is to live in province XYZ, you must live and file your taxes in that particular province and do everything in that province. After 2 years, you can choose to move to any other province. But the point is, you've contributed economically to the development or to the bottom line of that province, which is why you were offered the provisional nominee in the first place. So I always say to clients, if you choose to go on the provisional nominee route, make sure you live in the province that you were given a provisional nominee for. Don't go wandering away, right? Now, these are certain, I've listed so many programs. I've listed the program that relates to Mr. A because he's a young, skilled person. I've listed the program that related to the person that had double masters because based on their skill, but that they were young. The program that relates to you because you have study. So once you study, you're also encouraged in the same program. if you have family here. So it's really, you're being given more points. So the more you have in the pool that is distorted, it's almost like your chances of being able to find the right program that fits for you. And all of these programs are based around the express entry, right? Now, I will move on to another one, which is quite interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs ask me about this program. We call it the startup program. The startup program is very, very interesting, right? Because what it does is it says, let's say you're the creator of a tech company or something, and based on the idea that you have that is successful elsewhere, you then approach the system, the Canadian system, and if you can find a certain number of incubators that will believe in your business idea and invest money in your business idea, then yourself and your co-founders can be offered a permanent residency, right? Now, it's a very interesting program, and yet there's a lot of detail into it. Now, remember, this session I'm having is exploring the options. So I'm kind of debugging all the Canadian myths, all the Canadian questions that people have. Oh, I heard there's a startup route. I just explained to you, yes, there is a startup route, but you need to have a strong business plan that somebody is going to say, look, I like that program, and I like that business. I'm willing to invest in it, so that's what then allows you to get a permanent residency. I've spoken about the school route. I've spoken about the business investor route. I've spoken about, now there's several other programs based on provinces. If I could talk about all the programs in one session, trust me, I would be here forever and ever. But the point of this session is really to debug and to explain all the programs that you have in Canada, so that you're able to think creatively and think, okay, you know what, I like the provincial nominee. What province do I want to go to? Or, okay, I like the school route. Maybe the school route is what works for me. Or, okay, actually, I like the economic class route. Could this work for me? And also to help people know that immigrating into Canada is not just a myth that people think, but it's a very, very legitimate program. It's highly competitive. And every day I say to people, it keeps getting tougher and tougher. But Canada is an economy that is willing and open to welcome people. I cannot tell you how many of my clients have come and started their lives again from the beginning, regardless of age, 50-year-old, 30-year-old, and come to start their life again. I cannot tell you how many and different kinds of people that have just said, look, the Canadian dream is possible. So I'm hoping from this conversation that is what you will get out of this. Now, I want to ask another question, and I'm hoping that this is one of the things that I want to speak about in this session, is when people say, I want to do the Canadian route, who should I be talking to? Should I be talking to, some people will tell you I'm talking to an agent, some people will tell you I'm talking to a regulated immigration consultant. It sounds like a very big term, but what is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant? What exactly is that term? And why does it sound so big and so big? A regulated Canadian immigration consultant, who is the ideal person you should be talking to if you're thinking of going to Canada, is somebody who is trained and has gone to school. So like myself, I had to do a 2-year diploma in immigration consulting. I had to write several exams in order to qualify. I'm trained and I'm regulated to handle your application. So what that simply means is, if, for instance, I make a mistake in your application, you can report me and my license will be taken away. So I'm accountable to a body of organization that regulates immigration consultants. And I'm going to show you the slide at a point. So an RCIC, which is what they're called, are regulated Canadian immigration consultants. And if you ever choose to go on the journey to Canada, the first thing you need to make sure of, if you're not doing the application on your own, which you can, are you speaking to a regulated Canadian immigration consultant? Now, if you look at my slides, you would see that there's a website there that shows you the body that actually regulates all immigration consultants in Canada. Now, clicking on that site will kind of help you know, okay, this is where I want to be, this is what I need to be doing, and this is how I need to be doing it. Whatever you do, make sure you're not talking to an agent, and make sure you're talking to a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. And that's what it is. So what does Canadian, that's exactly what it is. You can see that's the website. It says www.college.ic.ca. That's your go-to. And they're called RCIC. So when you do decide to go into the Canadian journey, remember this session has just been an overview. I hope that you can be speaking to regulating Canadian immigration consultants, which is what I am. The old name used to be called ICCRC. That's the kind of a name and the logo that we had before. Now I'm going to be going into Philly Magna and what we do. And I'm hoping that we can hear back from you in the future about the options that you want and you're considering and taking. With Philly, you're certain that any of the immigration consultants that are working for you are regulated and certified and trained to do what they're supposed to be doing. So for instance, you will be working with someone like myself. We have client relationship officers, which kind of act as people that walk behind the scenes and do the administrative work. But the team is filled with a strong, you have legal counselors as well in the team. You have immigration consultants, RCICs in the team. We can offer you different programs, and I'm going to show you the list of programs that we have on offer. We have the student visas. We have the skilled worker visa, if that's what you're thinking about. We have even programs relating to citizenship. And we have different programs that we can offer you depending on what you want and your journey in terms of Canada, right? But it would be such a delight to be able to do that for you. Now, people ask, and you can see from my slide, so you have immigration consultants, we can handle permanent residency, we can handle skilled worker visas, temporary residence permit, immigration and relocation services, and visiting visas, so we can handle it all. And that's why you need to be speaking to us at Philly Magna. Now I'm going to move on to my next slide, which says, and it's really talking about us as a company and the work that we do and why we are different. Why Philly Magna, which is the question. I can speak to any other immigration consulting company, or I can speak to anybody else. Why? I've already answered this question, why you should work with a professional. For us, we are a professional consultancy. So reason why you should hire an immigration consultant is because you want somebody that is trained. Why you should hire us at Philly Magna is because we are trained and we know the work that we're supposed to be doing. We know how we're supposed to be doing it. And we're trained year in, year out to deliver on the work that we have. And that is the question in terms of why Philly Magna. Now let's talk about the core values. Yes, we're professional in approach, client confidentiality, best practice, innovative research, international and cross-country representation, service excellence and delivery, and we have a diverse team. Now, I'll tell you a bit about our core values. I say to people, a company's core values kind of tells you who they are, or who they are and what they stand for. Philly Magna's core values are called the basic. So best practice will always professional service excellence and delivery, integrity and confidentiality. We are your basic. So if there's anything you want to do in terms of immigration consulting, you want to be starting from the basic level, and we are your basic. Now, I'm slowly coming to the end of this session. I've absolutely enjoyed speaking to all of you, depending on the part of the journey that you are in terms of exploring immigration consulting. What I would say to you is you need to keep moving, keep going, don't stop. I remember when I was considering the Canadian journey for my family, every day you had to do something. It's a project that requires a lot of work, but that's why you have us at Philly Magna. You can outsource the work to us and you can just keep going and keep moving. And now, if you would like more information about Philly Magna, I'm just going to be leaving the company details here. Whilst I take questions, I'm going to pause and stop the recording whilst I take any questions. But I'm also looking forward to hearing from you by email. You can email us info.global@phillymagna.com, or you can contact us for 373749297 or on our social media, fm.immigration. It will be an absolute pleasure to hear back from you. Until later, I am the founding partner of Philly Magna, and it will be such a delight to continue to hear from you. Thank you.